and welcome back to Cooking Club, the Independent Chef. So today is the last video in our series, so we're going to finish off nice and sweet, and we're going to make a cake with a little bit of icing today. So there's a few things that you need to know when you're baking. Baking is an exact science, so you need to measure your ingredients pretty precisely. With cooking, you can kind of add things, take some things away, and it's not going to change your finished product too much except for some flavor. But baking is not like that. So basically, if your ingredients aren't measured properly, a soft, chewy cookie could go from that to being hard as a rock. So measuring is very important. So the most precise way of measuring the ingredients is actually by weight. So you would take a kitchen scale and then you'll just add a bowl or whatever on top and measure your ingredients into that. The weight of an ingredient never changes. But if you're measuring using measuring cups, the volume, the amount that's actually in the cup can change. So if possible, use recipes that have weights rather than just like 1 cup measurements. But not all recipes have that, so I will show you kind of how to properly measure some ingredients. So we'll start by kind of preparing our cake. So first off, we use flour. So I've got a bowl of flour here, so we need 1.5 cups of flour. So in order to measure flour properly, you're going to take a spoon and take your measuring cup, and you're going to actually use that spoon, fluff up your flour in the container a little bit, so just move it around. You want to add a little bit of air, and then you're going to scoop the flour into your measuring cup. Never take your measuring cup directly and just scoop it right in, okay? Because you want your flour to be a little bit fluffier and not totally kind of packed in there. So just keep adding until it overflows on the top. Then take a knife and you're going to level it off. So I just take it and you just push it along, and then it's totally level. So this is 1 cup of flour. And we'll do the same with our 1/2 cup. So scoop. And level it off. So that's how you properly measure flour. So in our flour mixture, we're going to be adding some baking powder. So to measure baking powder, you're just going to use your small kind of measuring spoons. But a thing to note with baking powder, or if you're using baking soda, you should test it before you use it to make sure it's actually still active. So with baking soda, it reacts with vinegar, so you just need to take a little bit of the soda, mix it with vinegar. If it bubbles, it's still active. With the baking powder, it reacts with hot water, so you're going to take about a teaspoon of this and mix it with a 1/3 cup of hot water, and if it bubbles, it's still active. So I've already tested this one, and it's still good. So for our recipe today, we need 1 3/4 teaspoon of baking powder. So I've got 1 teaspoon, so this one you can just scoop. But again, get a knife or something flat and level it off. So 1 teaspoon and 3/4, so I've got a 1/4 teaspoon, so I need to do this 3 times. So scoop, level, that's 1, scoop and level, 2, and 3. Excellent. All right. Now this is just going to sit to the side there. And next, we're going to measure our sugar. So I've got some white sugar here. We need 1 cup of sugar. And so with white sugar, it's the same as with flour. Just take a spoon and scoop it in all the way to the top. You can even pour it in if that's a little bit easier. And with brown sugar, it's actually different. So with brown sugar, you can scoop directly in the container and press it against the side because you want to compact the brown sugar. So it needs to be kind of pressed in. You can also scoop it and then press down with the spoon with brown sugar. And when you dump it in your bowl, it should hold its shape. So that's how to properly measure brown sugar. So this is 1 cup of white sugar. So we just scooped and leveled. All right, so next in our recipe, we need some butter. So as I mentioned in a previous video, butter has the markings right on it that can tell you kind of what that approximate amount is. But again, weight is going to be way more accurate. But because not all recipes have that weight measurement, we will just kind of use the approximate numbers here. So it's actually right here, half a cup, so it's perfectly kind of where I need it to be. So I'm just going to cut. Try to cut as straight as possible. And then this half cup of butter is going to go in my sugar. With butter, try to leave it out on the counter for a little while. You want it soft. It's just way easier to blend that way. And so just take it out of the fridge about 2 hours before you need it and let it sit on the counter, or if you just leave butter out on the counter, that's fine too. All right, so our eggs. So how to properly kind of do eggs is always crack them into a separate bowl. So that way, in case you get any eggshells or maybe your egg is rotten, it's better to put it in a separate bowl, and then that way you can just throw it out, rather than if I added it to my sugar and my butter, I would have to throw all of this out and start over. So crack your eggs into a separate bowl. You can do a visual check, see if they're okay. You can even give it a little smell. If it's rotten, it'll have a funny smell. So that one's good, and there's no eggshell, so I'm going to add it. Actually, I can't add it yet. We'll add our next egg. I gotta cream that butter first. All right, add our other egg. And I actually did get a little bit of eggshell in there. So make sure you scoop that out. Excellent. All right, so that's how to do the eggs. And then we have milk. So milk and any other liquid ingredient, you're going to get a liquid measuring cup. So this is a liquid measuring cup, and these are dry measuring cups. So these are more meant for dry ingredients, and these are for wet ingredients. So for milk, we need half a cup of milk. So what you're going to do is when you're pouring, you're going to want to go down to eye level, find your correct measurement, and then pour in. And then that way, when you're at eye level, you can see exactly where that measurement is, where if I'm looking from the top, I can't see it that well, and it might not be accurate. So that's our half cup of milk. And then when we measure in our vanilla you can just pour directly into the measuring spoon. So we mostly have our ingredients prepped. So in order to make this cake, we are going to kind of get started with that. All right, so we've basically got all of our ingredients prepped now and kind of measured out. So to get started with the cake, first you actually want to preheat your oven to 350 degrees, get that warming up while you're preparing your cake. Actually, we'll do our cake pan. So for this recipe, it's just a small cake, so we're using a small pan. So you need to make sure that you grease your pan well. A mistake that a lot of people make is not greasing their pans, and then they try to get the cake out and it sticks. So an easy way that you can do this is you can use a cooking spray. So spray that in there over the sink or outside is best. Make sure you get the edges. And then on top of that, take some flour and sprinkle it in. Move it around in the pan so that you fully coat your pan with flour. Just like that. If there's any left over, just dump it in the garbage. And that way, your pan is greased and floured, and it's not going to stick. All right. So now that our pan is ready, we can start making our cake. So we're going to cream our butter and our sugar. So again, we've got half a cup of butter, 1 cup of sugar. You're going to mix it with either a hand blender, a stand mixer. You can do it by hand with a spoon, but it takes a lot of work, so I really recommend getting a hand blender. And we're going to cream it until the sugar is fully incorporated in the butter and it is nice and fluffy. All right, so now our sugar and our butter is fully creamed. So it's fully mixed together, there's no separate sugar, and it's kind of like a paste. So now we're going to add our eggs and we're going to beat them in. So you can just dump in your eggs. And we'll quickly beat those. All right, our eggs are in. Now we're going to add our vanilla. So we need 2 teaspoons of vanilla. So be careful when you're adding it. Gently pour and then dump in. You don't want to overfill too much. There we go. We're going to mix that in. Now well combined. So now we have our flour and our baking powder here. So just stir that so that the baking powder is kind of mixed in with that flour. And then we're going to add this flour and baking powder mixture into our cream, sugar, butter, and eggs and vanilla. So you can just put all of that in there. Tap your bowl, try to get it all out. And then we're going to blend that as well, just until it's all fully mixed together. So that is now fully mixed. So with cake, you don't want to beat it too much because then you're going to change the texture of your cake. You can either make it go really kind of flat and hard and tough. So don't overbeat or overmix your cake. And lastly, we have our milk. So we are going to add our milk and mix it until, again, it's all fully combined and looks the same throughout. off your beaters, beat them together to try to get all that batter off. Excellent. And just use a spatula to kind of go around the edge, mix in if there's any kind of flour left there. Give it a little stir, make sure it is all fully combined. Excellent. All right, so now we're going to put it into our cake pan. So this just makes one cake, so we're going to put the whole thing in this one pan. If you double this recipe, then just make sure that you try to split the batter equally between whatever pans that you have. You can also use this recipe to make cupcakes if you like. So then you would just use a cupcake liner or a cupcake pan with liners instead. All right, try to get all of that in there. Spread it around. All right, so our batter is now in our pan. So with some different cake recipes, the consistency of your batter might be different. You might have a thinner one, or it might be a little bit thicker like this, and that's totally fine. It's just a different ratio of the liquid to the other ingredients in your cake. And just some other quick things to note before we pop this in the oven. When you're making a cake, once you put it in the oven, don't open the oven door. So that'll let heat out and it'll change kind of how it bakes. Your cake can fall a little bit. It also takes a little longer to bake. So to check, just turn your oven light on and visually look. Once it's kind of starting to brown, then you can take it out and test it. And to test your cake, you're going to pull it out and stick a toothpick in the middle. And if it comes out and there's no batter stuck on it, then it means your cake is cooked and you can take it out. If there's a little bit of batter, then remove the toothpick, stick it back in the oven for a little bit, and then wait and try again. So we're going to pop this in the oven and it's going to bake for about 30 to 40 minutes. And then while that's baking, we will make some frosting. So our cake is in the oven and it's baking. So while that's happening, we can start to make the frosting. So the frosting I'm going to make today is just a simple buttercream frosting. So basically a buttercream frosting is when you mix butter and icing sugar. It's one of the easiest icings to make. And basically, yeah, it just needs those things, a little bit of milk and some flavoring. So you can change the flavor of this icing to kind of be whatever you want. So we're just going to use vanilla extract, but you can use any other type of extract that you like. You can make it minty with peppermint, add lemon extract, almond, whatever you like. You can also add a tablespoon or two of cocoa powder to turn it into a chocolate frosting. So with frosting, you want to beat your butter until it's light and fluffy. So most recipes will say that, light and fluffy. So the light doesn't actually refer to the weight of it. Light actually means the color. You want the color to change of the butter. So it's a little bit kind of yellow right now. You want it to lighten in color. So that's the biggest thing kind of when making this type of frosting. So we're going to use the electric hand mixer and beat this butter for probably 5 to 7 minutes. So it's going to take quite a while to get that butter to where we want it to be. And then we've got our icing sugar. We'll add a little bit of milk and that vanilla. This icing can be a little bit sweeter because it is the icing sugar. If you don't like super sweet frostings, there are a bunch of other frostings out there that are a bit less, that use actually granulated sugar in less amounts than that confectioner sugar. So we are going to get started by beating this butter. All right, so our butter is now creamed, so it's light, it's actually lightened in color, it's fluffy. Make sure you use room temperature butter, it just beats a lot easier, same for the cake. And one more thing I was going to say. Oh, and this is half a cup of butter. There we go. So for this recipe, we've got half a cup of butter in here. So now we're going to add our icing sugar. So to properly measure icing sugar, there's a few different things. So a recipe might say sifted confectioner sugar or icing sugar, or it might say icing sugar sifted. So if the sifted comes first, that means you need to sift it first and then measure. Or if the sifted comes at the end, you're going to measure first and then sift it. So our recipe says icing sugar sifted. So you're going to need kind of a mesh strainer. It needs to be very fine, okay? And so I'm just going to place this over top of our butter. So we need 2 cups of icing sugar. So we're going to scoop into our measuring cup. And again, until it's overflowing, use a flat edge. So now our sugar is measured, so we've got 1 cup here, and then we're going to sift it. So I'm just going to pour it in there. And my strainer is big enough that we can do both cups at the same time. So we'll get our 2nd cup of icing sugar. And measure, level it off. All right, add that in there. So 2 cups of icing sugar. Then just use your spoon and move it around in the icing sugar to get it to fall through. This just gets all of the lumps out of your icing sugar, and that way your icing isn't going to be lumpy. All right, so all of our icing sugar is now sifted into our bowl. And our cake is ready. Look at that. We'll test our cake at the same time then too. All right, so I can see just by pulling my cake, it's wobbling in the middle, so I know it's not cooked yet. So we're going to put it back in. And we'll let it cook for at least another 5 minutes. All right, so to continue with our icing, we will beat our icing and our sugar and our butter together. All right, so our butter and our icing sugar is mixed. Now we're going to add our vanilla. So we need 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla. So that's 1.5. So normal vanilla is brown in color. It will tint your icing to a light brown. So if you don't want that, make sure you buy clear vanilla then. And we will mix this in together. a little bit. So you can use milk or just water or whipping cream. So the recipe calls for 2 tablespoons, but when you're adding your liquid, you want to be careful. So only add 1 tablespoon at a time until you get the consistency that you like. So if you're going to be using a piping bag and a tip to kind of pipe some decorations, you want a thicker icing. Or if you're just going to be kind of spreading it over the top of the cake like we're going to be doing, it can be a little bit thinner, but you never want runny icing. Okay, so I'm going to actually measure over a different cup so that I don't put too much in my icing, because it's very hard to take it out. All right, so we'll start with 1, and we'll mix that in and see what our consistency is at. Still very thick, so we can definitely add another tablespoon of milk. So we'll quickly check our cake. Not quite yet. All right, so with our icing, oh yeah, it's starting to look really good. So there's some movement. It's not super, super stiff. And I can spread it fairly easily using the beaters, which is what you want to kind of test when you're spreading to see how it'll go on the cake. So our icing is almost done. So we're going to add a little bit of food coloring. So I've got some pink here. Just be careful that when you're using liquid food colorings, again, you're adding more liquid to the icing, so it will thin out a little bit. So sometimes it's even better to add that food coloring before you add your kind of last bit of liquid, because that way you'll get a better consistency. So we'll add a few drops. So we have a lovely pink icing, and we'll just mix that in. Awesome. Now it is nice and pink, and our icing is ready to go. So we will just wait for our cake to come out, then we'll have to wait for our cake to cool, because if you ice your cake while it's hot, all of the icing is just going to melt and run everywhere, and it's going to not look very pretty. So we will let our cake cool, and then we will ice it after. Alright, so our cake is all cooled, and it is ready to be iced. So what I've done is I've actually taken our cake and I've flipped it upside down on top of a plate that is also upside down. That's going to make it a little bit easier to ice. If you're fancy and you have a turntable, those are excellent for icing cakes, but you can also do this. And that'll just look a little bit prettier with it face side or top side down, because you have a nice flat surface, so it'll look nice and flat. You can also kind of cut off the top to make your cake flat as well, but this works too. So to ice your cake, you can either just use a knife, or an offset spatula is super handy, because that way you can kind of scoop and spread, and it has a larger kind of spreading area than a knife. So I'll show a little bit of both. So just need to take your icing, grab a big scoop of it, put some on, plop it on there, nice and good. With a cake that is just kind of one layer, you're going to start at the top and then do the sides. If you had a taller cake, you would kind of either do the sides or the top, whatever worked for you. Spread it out a little bit. So we don't have tons of icing here, so we want to make sure that it's not too thick. Alright, so that's kind of how it works with a knife. And if you use your offset spatula, you can push that around. Excellent. Grab some more. And then when your top is done, you can even start kind of pushing it over the edge. And that way it'll start to go down the sides of your cake. Work our way on the side. So you will get some crumbs, and that's okay. If you wanted to be even more professional, you would put a really, really thin layer of icing over top of the whole cake, and that's called the crumb coat. So it catches all of those crumbs so that they don't spread around. But when you're just doing a more simple cake like this, you can just spread it. And if, like I said, if you get some crumbs, that's okay. All right. Just working our way around. And just one more little bit on the back here. All right. Now our cake is nice and frosted. You can even it out a little bit if you like. A little extra icing on there. And there we go. That's our cake. Thank you so much for watching. And we hope that you watch some of our other videos as well. And please check our website for any updates. Thank you so much.